Hi, I'm Patty Ragsdale, and I am the grower of native plants and alpaca fiber here at Happy Apples Farm in Tonganoxie, Kansas. And I work here along with my husband, Brent. And Brent is an engineer, and so even though I grow this stuff, I couldn't do any of it without him making things work. We have a small herd of alpacas. We have 6 boys. We don't raise any babies or anything like that. We just harvest fiber. They are very fun, kind of stinky, and they spit mostly at each other, but they like clover a lot. So when people come, even though they don't like to be petted, we usually give them a big stalk of clover and let the boys eat from it. I got interested in native plants when I was in college. I was studying wildlife management, and part of those studies was to, you had to take botany and things like that, and ecology. And one of the classes was plant taxonomy, and that was basically you'd go out in the field or in the woods and you would find interesting plants and you'd figure out what they were using a key, and you'd learn the plant families and things like that. So taxonomy is like the organization and the naming of plants in families and things like that. So in native plants, the interesting thing is the historical aspect to it. Like, was this here before European people got here? And did Native Americans use them for something? And then the longer I do it, the more interesting it is to find out what insects depend on that plant or what birds depend on those plants. So the reason scientific names are really interesting because actually the first part of the scientific name doesn't really refer to anything about the plant usually. It's just kind of like a proper name, like your name. And then the second part of a scientific name, and usually there's 2 parts, the genus and the species. So it's called binomial nomenclature, if you want to know a big word. But that means that every plant and every species, not just plants, it could be birds or insects or all these living things, have 2 names, scientific names, that say exactly what species they are. So this plant, the first name, hydrangea, is just a proper name for all genus hydrangea. And then the second name, which is quercifolia, is quercia refers to an oak, and folia refers to leaf. So quercifolia would be oak leaf. So it's hydrangea oak leaf. And that's the interesting and the important thing about a scientific name, is that with some plants, their common name, it can have more than one common name. For instance, there's a little Rudbeckia down here, a little black-eyed Susan. So all black-eyed Susans are in the genus Rudbeckia. So there's one out here in the garden, and we can go look at it. Black-eyed Susans go by all kinds of names. So this is a coneflower when actually it's in the Rudbeckia genus. But it could be called something else. It could be called the short coneflower or something because it's a little bit shorter. So species matters mostly because we know what we're talking about when we say the scientific name. In this case, there's so many different Rudbeckias, different black-eyed Susans, and it really, really matters which species you're using because they are all different. Like this one is a perennial, it'll come back every year, whereas this one over here is the one that we typically see in Kansas. And after it flowers, it dies back like this. This is Rudbeckia hirta, and it's gorgeous when it's blooming, absolutely beautiful. But then it does this, it dies. So you can see that there's one back here, a different plant that's still blooming. But once that's done, it's going to turn this color. And it won't come back from the plant. This plant is dead. But the seeds, all of these, produce just hundreds of seeds, and it will self-seed everywhere. So it's a really good thing. But if I just said I wanted a black-eyed Susan and I got this, I'd have to know which species, because this one isn't going to come back next year, whereas that one does. When I was lots younger, I would spend almost, I really wasn't doing very much that had anything to do with native plants, except that I spent a lot of time outside. And I was always very curious about what I was seeing. And I think sometimes when you're young and things don't move very fast, I was a very impatient person, and so I drew a lot. I found those things very interesting, and when I was younger, we didn't have the internet where I could just Google it. So I would really look at things closely and I would draw them, and I became an artist. So when I was 15, I thought I was an artist, and I just liked to be outside. So a lot changed. I learned a lot more about myself as I got older. And what I really enjoyed about the outdoors was how much happens out here. There's so much more that happens outside than the things that happen in my house. So I just find myself coming out here to look around. This one is called gray-headed coneflower. It's a really tall plant. Usually gets, it actually blooms at about 5 feet tall. But it's, the bees, when it's blooming, it's Ratibida pinnata. So it's called gray-headed coneflower, and pinnata because this is a pinnate leaf structure. But these are little flowers that bloom, so before the flowers bloom, it's just gray like that. But this is a composite flower, and all the gray ones are flowers that have not bloomed yet, but it'll bloom from the bottom all the way up, and you can see this one's just starting, those are at the bottom. And in the morning, those have yellow pollen. There's a ring of yellow pollen. And so the bees will come and they will make a circle. They'll collect pollen really fast. So this is my garden, by the way. This is the one that when I'm selling to people plants, I take them through here so they can kind of see what the plant does in the garden. But I'll show you when I start what it looks like. So this is how I keep, it's very messy in the summer because we're really working fast. But I keep all my seeds on these shelves back here, and it keeps them dry. And then I come in, I plant in trays. I plant in trays, and they sit in here, and you can see these little plants have started to grow. And we'll just take these out and put them in pots and let them grow in their pots for a little while. So this is how everything starts, is in these trays in here. And then we do all of our potting out here. Even though a lot of these plants like full sun, because they're in pots, they dry out really fast and they get really hot. So they do a lot better with a little bit of shade. And then we use, this is a really simple irrigation system where we just bought these little sprinkler heads, and Brent, being the engineer that he is, made it all work. You put all the pipes together, and then all I have to do in the morning is turn it on. I just determine based on the weather how long they need to be watered. And so anyway, I have around 100 different species of plants that I sell. And so, oh, there's still a bee working on it right here. This is so all the Monardas go by a common name of beebalm. This one is called spotted beebalm. This is that same Ratibida pinnata that we saw up there, the gray-headed coneflower, in a pot, trying to survive long enough to get into somebody's garden. April through October that's when we're open for seasonal sales of native plants. Now the alpaca fiber right now, we're just selling that online. We haven't got our online store set up yet. We started this whole thing by selling at farmers markets, and the alpaca fiber was really how I drew people to my table so that I could talk to them about native plants, because I had pictures of the alpacas there, and then I would let people feel the fiber right off of the alpacas. And I learned to hand spin, so I could show them how to hand spin. But you can find out more about my hours and what I offer on the website. It's thehappyapplesfarm.com. And then you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm Garden Rambler on Instagram. And we have a Facebook page for the farm too. It's the same basically as the Instagram is. So anyway, that's all about our farm, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and you'll get to visit us here sometime and meet the alpacas. They're fun as long as you've got clover.